You ever show up to your own brother's wedding, only to be told by his bride that your spot is next to the trash bins? That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of their love story, I was just background noise. My name's Lucas, I'm 33, and I've always been the quiet sibling. The calm one. The one who shows up, helps carry boxes during a breakup, covers for last-minute bills, and listens without interrupting. My younger brother Brandon? He's the opposite. Loud, magnetic, constantly surrounded by people and drama. We were never close, but I always figured that was okay. We didn't clash. We just coexisted. But I always showed up. Always. Birthdays, college move-in days, hospital visits, messy breakups, when he called, I came. Even when I didn't fully agree with his choices, I was there. So when Brandon announced he was marrying Sienna, I RSVP'd yes, without hesitation. She and I had met maybe 3 times total. I got the sense she was polished, ambitious, and about as warm as a marble countertop. But still, family is family, right? That was my first mistake. The second came when I texted Brandon a week before the ceremony just to ask about the dress code. He replied 2 days later. Not a call. Not even a sentence. Just a thumbs-up emoji. That was the first flicker of something wrong. But I brushed it off. Weddings are chaos, I told myself. He's probably stressed. Don't take it personally. The big day arrived. It was late fall, unseasonably warm. The venue, a vineyard called Redwood Estate, was the kind of place that looked like it had its own private florist and a minimum price tag of 6 figures. I drove nearly 2 hours to be there. Brought a card with a generous check tucked inside, more than I should have spent, honestly, but again, it felt like the right thing to do. When I got to the welcome table, a woman with a clipboard glanced at me, then frowned. Name? Lucas Hayes. She skimmed the list, then scribbled something on a sticky note. Oh. Just you, right? I nodded, confused. She pointed toward the far edge of the outdoor ceremony space. We're pretty full, but there's some standing room near the hedge. I blinked. There's no seat for me? She shrugged. Bride side made some last-minute changes. Last-minute changes. Like I was overhead luggage they forgot to account for. Still, I held it together. Told myself not to make a scene. It was Brandon's day. I could deal with it. That's when I heard her voice. Sienna. Sharp. Cool. Completely uninterested in who she was talking to. Oh, he can stand by the trash bins, she said, motioning behind her without even turning. We're out of seats. I froze. She wasn't joking. Her hand lazily waved in the direction of the catering station, where 2 large trash cans sat behind the last row of chairs. You'll be fine, she added, like she was brushing lint off her dress. People stared. Some awkwardly looked away. Brandon? He was just a few feet away. Saw the whole thing. He gave me a weak, polite smile, then turned back to his conversation like it was all perfectly normal. Like I was nothing. And that's when it hit me. Not with rage. Not even sadness. Just clarity. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt heavier. It held a 4-figure check and a handwritten note wishing them love and happiness. And in that moment, I realized what I truly was to them. A prop. A wallet. An afterthought. So I smiled at Sienna and said. Fitting, honestly. Since that's probably where this marriage belongs. I don't remember if she gasped or just blinked. I didn't wait to find out. I turned around and walked straight back to the parking lot. Lighter. Clearer. And done. Seriously, you're gonna make a scene? Brandon said, like I was the one who'd shoved myself next to a trash can at his wedding. That's when I realized we weren't just different people, we lived in completely different realities. I had just reached my car when I heard the footsteps behind me, quick, unbalanced. "Lucas, wait." I didn't stop. But he caught up. There stood my younger brother, red-faced, flustered, tugging at his fancy rented suit like it was choking him. "Come on, man. It's my wedding." I turned, leaning against the car door. "And I was your brother." He winced. "You are my brother. Which is why I don't get why you're acting like this." "Acting like what?" I said. "Like someone who didn't get a seat? Like someone who got told to stand by the trash by your bride?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, that wasn't great. But it's Sienna's day. You know how she gets when things don't go right." And there it was. That line. You know how she gets. I'd heard it before. Not just about her. About our mom. Our dad. Even him. It was the family's universal excuse. The magic spell that turned toxicity into just being particular. "So let me get this straight," I said, voice level. "Your fiancé told your only brother, who gave you money for that engagement ring, by the way, to stand next to literal garbage, and your response is, you know how she gets?" Brandon opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. We had a lot of guests. It wasn't personal. Not personal. Even your DJ's assistant had a seat. Her lash tech had a seat. You think that just happened? He looked away. That silence said everything. She said she wanted a small ceremony, he mumbled. I laughed once, low, bitter. A small ceremony with a catered grazing wall, custom signature cocktails, and 30 of her Instagram friends in designer sunglasses? Brandon didn't argue. He couldn't. Because we both knew the truth. This wasn't an oversight. It was a message. One I'd received loud and clear. I pulled the envelope with the wedding check from my pocket and slipped it back into my coat. You didn't even notice I didn't have a seat. I figured you'd find one. No, I said. You figured I wouldn't make a fuss. Because that's who I've always been. The quiet one. The helper. The extra. The guy who always shows up, even when no one notices. He took a small step back like the words had actual weight. Maybe they did. I opened the car door and paused. You think I'm making this about one moment, I said. But I've been standing by the trash in this family for years. The difference is, today, I finally saw it. Brandon's voice dropped. So what now? You're just cutting me off. No, I said. I'm finally treating myself like someone worth showing up for. And then I left. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just, gone. That night, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the untouched wedding card. And for the first time, I started doing the math, not just the money, but the years. How many birthday parties had I driven hours to attend? How many late-night phone calls had I picked up when Brandon had too much to drink or too many feelings? How many quiet moments had I swallowed, nodding along like I didn't notice the hierarchy? I thought about how many times I'd let myself be treated as optional, as background, as invisible. And then I remembered something he'd probably forgotten. The condo. Their so-called starter home. The one they kept posting about online like they built it from scratch. Brandon didn't qualify for the mortgage alone. His credit was wrecked. Mine? Solid. Pristine. He'd begged me to co-sign. Just a formality, he said. 6 months tops. Then they'd refinance. I wouldn't even know the place existed. Only it had been 7 months, and guess whose name was still on the deed? Mine. They thought they could push me aside, but they'd built their perfect little life on my foundation. So that night, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and pulled up the property documents. And smiled. Because they were about to learn something they never expected. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. And I was just getting started. People think quiet means weak. What they don't realize is that quiet people see everything. And when we move, we don't yell. We pull the foundation out from under you. The morning after the wedding, I woke up early. Not sad. Not angry. Clear. I called out of work and brewed a cup of strong coffee. I had one tab open on my laptop, the co-ownership agreement for Brandon and Sienna's condo. My name was right there. Clear as day. I hadn't just co-signed the mortgage. I was on the deed. Full legal co-owner of the property they now referred to as their dream home. Funny. They had built a Pinterest-perfect life and never once mentioned the fact that I had literally made it possible. Not online. Not in person. Not even a thank you in passing. They wanted me invisible, until I wasn't. At 11:03 a.m., I called Thomas, the real estate attorney who helped me purchase my own place years ago. Calm. Efficient. The kind of guy who doesn't flinch when you ask, so, hypothetically, what if I wanted to take back a property I legally co-own? He didn't even hesitate. If your name's on the deed, Lucas, you've got a lot of leverage. You can initiate a forced sale. Or, if you want, you can reclaim occupancy. Doesn't matter if you've never lived there. That was all I needed. I thanked him, hung up, and started typing. Not a threat. Not a warning. A clean, professional document. Notice of intent to assume full occupancy. I printed it, folded it neatly, slid it into an envelope, and drove to the condo. They weren't home. I didn't knock. I just slipped the letter through their mail slot. That night, at 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Brandon. What the hell is this letter? Are you serious? I didn't respond. 2 minutes later. You can't do this, man. Sienna is freaking out. We just got married. This is the worst possible time. I finally replied with one line. You should have thought of that before telling me to stand by the trash. No reply. But I pictured it clearly, Sienna waving the letter like a live grenade, Brandon pacing, both of them finally realizing that the silent brother they ignored was now the one person who could tear their happy little life in half. And I could. And I would. 3 days later, I got the email I was expecting. From Sienna, of course. Polite on the surface. Passive-aggressive in tone. Faux concern masked as diplomacy. Dear Lucas, I'm sorry things played out the way they did at the wedding. Emotions were high. I had hoped we could move forward as a family. But your recent actions make that difficult. We would prefer to resolve this without legal involvement. Let's be adults about this. Sienna. Adults? She told me to stand next to garbage like I was a delivery guy who showed up late. And now she wanted to play nice? Too late. I didn't reply. Instead, I filed the official paperwork to initiate a forced sale of the condo. Thomas drafted it within 2 days. Brandon and Sienna received the legal notice that same week. I expected anger. I got something better. Panic. The phone rang non-stop. Emails. A few late-night texts. Even my mother, Nancy, got involved. She showed up to my apartment one evening uninvited, holding a Tupperware of lasagna like it could erase a decade of disrespect. We need to talk, she said. No greeting. No apology. Just entitlement wrapped in maternal guilt. She sat down on my couch and sighed, setting the lasagna down on the table like it was an offering. I heard you're trying to take the condo. Why are you doing this to your brother? I own the condo, Mom. Half of it. She blinked like I was speaking a foreign language. You know how much this place means to Brandon and Sienna. Yeah, I said. And apparently, not enough to reserve a folding chair for the guy who made it possible. She flinched. That stung. Good. Sienna was stressed, she said. It was her big day. She didn't mean anything by it. I stood. Do you know how many times I've been told that exact sentence, Mom? About you. About Dad. About Brandon. About everyone. You've always been the strong one, she whispered. Exactly, I replied. Strong enough to carry the weight. But I'm done carrying it for people who would rather see me invisible than seated at the table. She said nothing. Just gathered the lasagna, left it on my counter, and walked to the door. I hope this is worth it, she muttered. I opened the door for her. It already is. And I closed it behind her. Quietly. Without regret. Because for the first time, I wasn't cleaning up a mess. I was lighting the match. They thought I was bluffing. That I'd back down like I always had. But when quiet people stop trying to keep the peace, we don't start wars, we end them. The email came exactly 2 weeks after I served the official paperwork. Polite. Legal. Desperate under the surface. From their new lawyer, clearly someone they hired last minute to try and salvage the wreckage. Our clients, Mr. Brandon Hayes and Mrs. Sienna Hayes, respectfully request that Mr. Lucas Hayes reconsider the forced sale and instead accept a voluntary buyout. They are prepared to offer $20,000 in exchange for his full relinquishment of ownership and claim to the property. $20,000. For a condo worth $500,000, with a $70,000 down payment I had helped secure. I actually laughed when I read it. That's what they thought I was worth. After I made their mortgage happen? After they built their future on my name? I typed my response in one sentence. Offer declined. See you in mediation. The mediation was scheduled downtown in a sleek office full of fake smiles and overpriced espresso. I wore a navy suit, simple but sharp. Sienna arrived first, lips tight, sunglasses indoors. Brandon trailed behind her, shoulders hunched like a scolded teenager. They didn't look like a newlywed couple. They looked like defendants. The mediator, a calm woman in her 50s, introduced us and opened with, "Mr. Hayes, since you initiated proceedings, would you like to begin?" I nodded and slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was my offer. But not to sell. To buy. I'm offering to purchase their half at full market value, I said, voice calm. Appraisal enclosed. I'll cover closing costs, legal fees, everything. They walk away with a clean check. No lien. No debt. Just done. Brandon blinked. Sienna looked like someone had slapped her with a wet newspaper. Excuse me, she snapped. You're offering to buy us out? Brandon said slowly. Yes, I said. Cash offer. 30 days to vacate. The mediator looked stunned. That's extremely generous. It wasn't generosity. It was strategy. They had backed me into a corner for years. Now it was my turn to own the space. They whispered back and forth for a few tense minutes. Sienna's whisper wasn't subtle, her hissed, "He's doing this to humiliate us," was loud enough for everyone to hear. Finally, Brandon sighed. We accept. And just like that, it was done. 4 weeks later, I had the keys. They were gone. No note. No goodbye. Just silence. I walked through the now empty condo, the one I helped them get, renovate, and decorate, and took it all in. The walls still had that fresh paint smell. A boho chandelier still dangled from the hallway. Sienna insisted made it feel elevated. I smiled. It was mine now. But I didn't want to keep it. 2 weeks after the title officially transferred to my name, I listed the property. It sold within 3 days, over asking. I made back my share of the investment and then some. But the real profit? Peace. And the best part? No more shared titles. No family strings. No pretending we were something we weren't. Just me. In my own apartment. Paid for in full. I put up one framed photo on the wall, not of family, not of memories. Just a landscape I'd taken on a solo road trip the week after the wedding. A single road, winding through empty hills. Freedom in every direction. Sienna, of course, tried to rewrite the story online. Posted cryptic Instagram stories about toxic siblings who sabotage from jealousy. Brandon posted some vague line about learning who's real. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't look back. One day, I got a text from my mom. I hope you're proud of yourself. I didn't reply. But if I had, I would have said, I am. Because I wasn't the background character anymore. I was the one who finally stepped forward, tore off the mask, and reminded them all. You can't build your dreams on someone else's silence forever. And when the quiet one finally speaks, you listen.